All right, AJT Jungle, welcome back. This is the third part of the power of habits, the mechanics of change. So, everything that I'm giving you, everything that I'm laying out is to help you change who you are and become who you need to be a successful trader. Okay, you can't just come off the street and be a successful trader unless the job or whatever you were in before trained you to be that person. Okay, it takes a little bit of work. It could be a lot of bit of work depending on who you are, but it's very important. And everything that I have laid out in all of the programs that I'm sharing with you are designed to help you change and become the person that you need to be in order to be a successful trader. It's the bottom line. Now, a lot of stuff I share, people don't want to hear. A lot of people sign up for mentoring, and I'm not stroking their ego or telling them what they want to hear and all that stuff, so they get mad, and that's not what I'm about. I'm a veteran. I'm a classroom teacher veteran. And I am used to trading, to teaching people things they may not want to be taught in order for them to be successful. And I'm used to teaching large groups of people where only a handful actually get it and want to move on. Most people are just in constant perpetual motion looking for the easy way out. And that's not what I'm offering. And that's not popular, which is good because I don't want it to be popular. I think everything is more effective and you get more in a smaller group. So that's why I like to keep it that way. That's why I 100% like to keep it that way. So let's get into the power of habits here. So just to review what we talked about last week, kicking a bad habit is hard because you develop a craving for the reward at the end of the habit loop. Remember, our habit loop that we talked about was the external cue, the cue that starts you engaging in the habit, then you have the routine inside of the habit, and then the reward you get for completing it. And oftentimes, the best rewards are for the bad habits or the worst habits. So it makes it hard to change. For instance, let's say you're on a diet. Let's say you have to change. Like for me, when years ago, when the doctor told me, you're have developed diabetes. All of a sudden it's hereditary that I know of. But my reward was always for eating all my food has been dessert. Remember, as a kid, it's like you can't have dessert unless you eat all your food. So that became a habit. Eating all your food became a habit. Okay, it became a habit, and the reward became the sweets. So now I'm older. Now I have the decision as to when I get my dessert, but the habit was already there. I finish my dinner and I get the dessert, but I had to change that. Okay, and it was very difficult to change a habit that I look forward to the reward so much. I look forward to the different desserts that these places had. Every place I went I knew what my favorite dessert was. So it's it's really hard to kick that. And I could tell you that, and I know you probably have some stories and things of habits you tried to break that had a really good reward at the end. Our habits stick again because they create that craving. But the good news is the craving can be used to form good habits as well. It's just a matter of understanding what it is and then being able to, flip the switch. Okay, but to change a habit, you must substitute the routine that you have. So for me, I needed to substitute the routine of having dessert. At first, it was just a cup of coffee. Okay, that was what I substituted for a cup of coffee. And it worked. So I began to look forward to my cup of coffee after dinner. I changed that habit. So I was able to substitute one routine for another, and I believed that I could change it. And I believed that this was better for me in the long run. But there is one issue that can derail the process, and it's what we fight every day in trading. As soon as a stressful event occurs, the old habits can pop back up, become too strong to resist, or could pop up without notice. And no matter how long your replacement habit has been in place, it pops up. So let's say I had a bad day trading. Okay? Let's say I had a bad day trading. And stressful day, and we go to dinner, and the waitress tells me about bread pudding or apple pie or peach cobbler. And it sounds so good. Guess what? That habit that I worked so hard to replace just came back because of a stressful event. Just came back. And I'm not even thinking about it. It's not even, and it won't really dawn on me until after the deed is done. That's where the issue comes in. Okay, so we've got to keep that in mind. Okay, but change can be achieved by focusing on what we call keystone habits and achieving small wins. All we need to do is achieve these small wins as we go, build our confidence, build our resistance and our resilience, and we'll be well on our way. So you get these small wins. They're early successes that are kind of easy to attain. It builds confidence, and then you're determined to keep it up. Stop. So developing keystone habits help you believe that improving is possible. So today we're going to talk a little bit about keystone habits. Now I'm making you hungry. Yeah, what about some good banana pudding? Stop. Alright, so some habits, they do have the power to start a chain reaction that begins in affecting other habits as they move through us. And if it's a positive habit, it's going to affect other habits positively. Alright, so in other words, some habits do mean more than others in rebuilding our mindset or remaking our mindset. So these are what we call keystone habits. They can influence how people work, eat, play, live, spend, and communicate. Stop. All right, Keystone Habits start a process that, over time, transforms everything. And guess what? I gave you a Keystone Habit last week that could totally transform your trading if you commit to it and you use it the right way. Does anybody remember what that is? Does anybody remember what that is? What is a Keystone Habit that I shared with you last week that if you did could totally transform your trading? Yep, journaling and reflection. If you do it the right way, it will totally transform your trading. Even I hated the word journaling. Okay, but when I was teaching, early on, like the second or third year, I went to a high schools that work conference, and they taught me how journaling could be an effective learning tool. So I brought it back to my classroom. My students hated it, but by the end of the year, I had more students passing the exams and the final exams, all because they used journaling. And what that journal did was subconsciously help them focus on their process when they were completing tasks. And I tell you, it made such a big difference. And I'm such a big advocate of journaling and reflecting. Making sure reflection is a part of your daily journal, not percentages and all this shit. That doesn't do anything for you other than stroke your ego or hurt your ego. That doesn't really matter. What matters is the substance that's a part of your trading. All right, so I think in the first 90 days of trading, we do spend extensive time on journaling. So that's something that, if you're having trouble with, then you want to make sure that you come in on the part when we talk about journaling and reflection. Because there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. And unfortunately, a lot of these courses and boot camps are teaching you the wrong way to journal. Just journaling is not gonna make it. You got to do it the right way, and you got to focus on the right things so that it helps you develop the right habits over time. All right, very, very important. Okay, so Keystone Habits also say that success doesn't depend on getting every single thing right. Now, is that helpful in trading? Is that helpful in trading? Think about it. Having that mindset, is that helpful in trading? So it doesn't depend on getting every single thing right, but instead relies on identifying a few key priorities and turning into powerful elements of change. That's what journaling does. That's a key keystone habit. That's what journaling does. It helps you identify a few key priorities that you can turn into elements of change. And that's what the most successful people that use to take advantage of the mentoring, that's what they do. Okay, they identify. You have to do the work and identify some key priorities, some things that you have identified that you can work on or that you need to work on that's going to help you get to the next level. Okay, the habits that matter the most are the ones that when they start to shift, dislodge, and reshape other patterns. That's what's key. All right. And Keystone Habits, really, it explains how Michael Phelps became an Olympic champion. And then why some college students outperform their peers. When you get to college, let me see if you guys can get this. When you get to college, what is one of the, if not the most important habit that you need to have down when you get to college? And this is what separates a lot of kids when they get to college. And if these kids don't develop this habit, they wash out. Does anybody know? What is that keystone habit? That one thing that students, that all successful students have. Not getting to class on time, but this is a habit. not less partying. This is a habit. Anybody else? Doing the work. Yeah, the study habits. Study habits. If you never develop the right study habits when you were in high school and in secondary education, if you didn't develop the right study habits and you don't do it when you get to college and you don't work on it when you get to college, guess what happens? They wash out. Okay, they wash out. And yeah, note taking and reviewing is a key part of your study habits. Okay, when you're in class and the teacher is doing a lecture, and that happens a lot in college. If you're not taking notes and then reviewing and reflecting on them, when you're studying, you're not gonna make it. I know that for a fact. Okay, I had dyslexia, went through all high school winging it, never studied, never cracked a book unless I had to answer questions for homework, but never studied. I learned the harder I studied, the worse I did. So what I did was I developed a habit, I developed a process that allowed me to, circumvent all of that. When I got to college, it didn't work. And thank God I had a humanities teacher, instructor, or professor my freshman year, first semester, who identified it and got me the help I needed very quickly so that I didn't wash out. But I'm a big believer in these keystone habits. Guys, I see it work in everybody that's successful. You're gonna see it. So we're going to talk about one keystone habit today. One. Well, we've already talked about journaling, and we're going to dive into that in the first 90 days of trading when we get to that. But today we want to focus on willpower. Okay, willpower is the most important keystone habit. It is a key habit in life. All right. And we've seen the fact that if we started out doing something and we didn't have the willpower, we tend to quit. Like if you tried to start exercising more, willpower can be inconsistent. If you don't have a process in place to put you in the right place at the right time so that you don't have to think about it, you can make going to the gym after work or after your training session part of what you do every day. You know, you won't have to worry about it. And the willpower component, you don't have to fight it because it becomes a habit. So willpower is what is one of the things that helps you develop your keystone habit. You turn that task into a keystone habit and you don't break down. But as you may have noticed, again, if you ever try to start something like going to the gym and you don't have a process to put you there, or you don't have a cue that cues you to go to the gym, a consistent cue, you're going to be inconsistent. Some days going to the gym works. Others days, if you go home and you chill out on the couch, you're less likely to get your ass up and go to the gym. So if you make it a habit to stop on the way home from work and not waiting until you get home and snack and all that stuff, then you have a better chance of being successful. So, why is that? Willpower is actually like a muscle. It's actually just like a muscle. It can tire out. It can wear yourself out. Um, do, 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 do. Hold on one second. Yeah. So let's say you let's say you took a bad trade and you get emotional from it. You start to beat yourself up over it. Right? You start to beat yourself up over it. You might not have any willpower left to stick to the process on the next trade because you've just screwed it up. You basically just screwed it completely up. But the analogy, it can go even further. Okay, by engaging in habits that demand resolution, say reflection and journaling, you can actually strengthen your willpower. Okay, call it a willpower workout. All right, by engaging in habits that demand a resolution. When you journal and reflect, there is a resolution. You have to grade yourself on your trading day. And you need to have some type of resolution as to what you're going to do to keep yourself from being in that same place tomorrow or the next day or the next day. All right, so here's a study. In the 60s, people were really big on, trying to study human nature and all this stuff, and they were studying the difference between races and all this stuff. I mean, there was just a lot that went on in the 60s, and a lot of studies that we learned about in school it was amazing. But this one was pointed out in the book, and it was about, they had a large group of 4-year-olds, and one by one they put them in a room. In the room, there was a nice big marshmallow sitting there, and the person conducting the experiment gave each child a choice. You can eat the marshmallow now, or wait 15 minutes and you can have 2 marshmallows when I come back. So the person left the room for like 15 minutes. They found out that only 30% of the children did not eat the one mushroom there. Okay, only 30%. But the interesting part was when they caught up with these kids after they were grown, they were adults, and they found out the ones that had the willpower, that 30%, had ended up with the best grades in school, were more popular on average, and were less likely to have any type of substance addictions. And willpower to them was a keystone habit that can be applied to other parts of life. So, that's a good example of how important willpower could be, and how important you developing it now and doing it by these small habits can help you in the future. All right, so other factors that affect your willpower. The stress comes from adverse conditions. Okay, and we did. No. I am tired. There's a whole nother room y'all can go in, so go. You're bothering me. A losing trade, or the market, a trade's not working out for you and all this stuff, can create adverse conditions. Am I right? How many of you experienced that? And Alan he has a very good point. People who make up their beds after waking up tend to build up on disciplined muscle. People that have a routine they follow, something that they accomplish. And there's a former Navy SEAL, this admiral, that gave a speech at a graduation. And one of the things he said was, if you start your day out with a small win, it sets the tone for the rest of your day. And so even if something doesn't work out for you, you have that small win to keep building on. And the same thing can happen to us in our trading. All right, so here's an experiment that Starbucks did. Starbucks found out when they did their study that all of their employees all had the willpower to smile and be cheerful, regardless of how they felt. Because look, you working in a coffee shop. The smells that you encounter all day, not from the customers, but the coffee and all of that, is positive. All right, it just, you can't help but not smile. It's like you can't be mad and frown and eat ice cream. It's just one of those things that just brings a smile to you no matter how bad you feel. But when things became stressful, for example, if a customer started screaming or fussing and bitching, moaning, and complaining, the employees there would, it would change everything, and it could ruin the rest of their day. When something that stressful, a bad habit started to come back. All right. So they realized that, hey, if we prepare our employees for these bad situations and have a plan for how they need to address them, they would have the willpower to follow the plan. And even under pressure, they would not lose all of their willpower. They will not, wear that muscle out. So how can that help us in trading? How do you think that can help us in trading? So let's think about it. What causes us the most stress, the most unpleasant feelings? What causes that for us in trading? Not on my computer. What causes, I know y'all know it. I know you know what causes you to have the most stress in your trading. There you go, losing. That gives us the biggest stress. So if we mentally prepare for losses, which is what I try to do every day in all of these programs, is to help you understand that losses are part of the game, and this is what you need to do when you're taking a loss, or how you need to respond to it. So if you develop a plan on how to respond to your losses, you're going to be fine. Okay? You're going to be really fine. All right. So here's the method that here's the method that Starbucks developed, and they named it the latte method, which means listening to the customer, acknowledging their complaint, taking action, and thanking the customer. And lastly, explaining why the issue occurred. By practicing this method over and over, I guess they call them baristas. The Starbucks baristas learn exactly what they should do when a stressful situation arises, and they stay cool. Does that make sense? That if you develop a process that you follow when you take a loss, barista, what did I say? Bartista? Hell, I don't know what they call them. But I know they're pretty cool. But that's exactly what we need to do. Think about it. If we take a loss and we come up with something similar, now, obviously, the latte method doesn't work um, as written, but we have to change it up. We can come up with the L, the A of acknowledging their complaint. It could be acknowledging, our part in the losing trade. But if we did everything that we're supposed to, then we're acknowledging that we did everything we're supposed to do. So we should be good. If we didn't, taking action is, fixing what we did, coming up with a reason or a way that we could not follow the same or not do the same thing again. It's really, and just coming up with a process that we can go through if we take a losing trade. Yeah, it may slow us down initially, but once we get it down and it becomes a process, then guess what? We won't have to think about it anymore. We just do it because it's part of what we do. All right, so the last thing is the lack of autonomy or agency. That comes from if people do things because they're ordered to do it. Like they have a boss that's continuing directing you to do this, do that, do this, do that. And that you're not doing things by choice, it messes with your willpower. It kills it. And then all these other problems start to create. So what you have to do by developing a habit, even if you're doing something that you don't want to do, you don't have to fight it anymore because it becomes a habit. And you just do it without thinking. Okay, then you could use your willpower on stuff that you really need to use it on when the situation presents itself. Like when you start to you feel upset and you start to and you start to what do you call it? And you start to revenge trade. Okay, and you start to revenge trade. So that can happen. I'm telling you, that can happen. %, that can happen. So, what you want to focus on this week, what your homework assignment is this week, and I'll email it out, is coming up with your own latte method. Doesn't have to spell latte, but just come up with your own method to address, when you lose, and you start to have that bad feeling. Okay, you got it? Does everybody understand the assignment? Now, some of you may already have this. You may be ahead of the game. Or if we worked in depth in our mentoring, then you've already done this. What you want to say, you based on the Starbucks example I gave you and how they developed the process that they call the latte method that prepares them for stressful situations. That's what you want to do for your trading, so that you can address stressful situations, so that you're able to address. You have a process that allows you to address your stressful situations. That's what your homework is. How lack of autonomy or agency impacts willpower. Let's say, how do you feel when you're working for somebody that is always just barking orders to you? Do this, do that. You already know that this is what you're supposed to do. You know what your job is. Okay, but somebody is always there barking and on your back and watching over you, and you have no ability to make your own decisions. Okay, that hurts your willpower, because you're being forced to do something rather than by choice, and you don't have the ability to choose like when you're going to do it or how you're going to do it. So it takes willpower to actually do it, because you don't want to do it. You're pissed off. You're aggravated. Okay, Yunit, does that make sense? Yep. And Alan makes another good point. I don't see where I honestly don't see where being berated can strengthen your willpower. I mean, I get what you're saying. That if it breaks it down, when it builds back up, it builds back up stronger. Okay, that's the point you're making. That when your willpower gets broken down, because it's like a muscle, that when it builds back up, it'll get stronger. I think that's the point you're trying to make. And I understand that. Yeah, but typically it's not positive. Like when you're reacting to, when your willpower is being tested and being broken down through this negative. Now listen, some people love to get ordered around, and for them, yeah, this is going to be a positive thing for their willpower. But most people don't like it. Most people like to make their own choices, And so if your willpower strengthens because of, something negative like this, then you're going to have an issue. But just like what we're talking about, you can change that response. You can change that negative response to a positive response. Okay, and if you do that and you build that habit, then yeah, your willpower is going to be better. But yeah, I get the point you're making. 100%. I get the point you're making. But and I probably should have said it more specifically, but I get the point you're making, and that's our process is to change it to something positive where it is positive and is not negative. Just like we flip the stress from adverse situations, we can flip the stress from you not having autonomy or have free agency to to do the things that we have to do, but do it in a way that makes sense to us. Yeah, Alan, you're 100% right. It's the outcomes. You have to detach yourself from the outcome and 100% focus on the process. So, that's why I want you guys to establish a process so that a losing trade will not create stress and not cause you to go into a negative habit loop. And yeah, accepting that, hey, if I hit my max loss, that's fine. I don't care. This is all part of it. I have a max loss to protect myself. And let's go. Let's go. Right? All right. So I hope this presentation Yep. So hopefully, how do you develop willpower? By creating the habit to where by completing that habit you have a reward at the end. So if you can create a habit, like let's say, we don't like losses. We don't want to take losses. And I'm only speaking in trading terms here. So we don't like losses. So what we have to do is create a habit to where we are seeing the advantages in a loss. We have to create a habit that we can see the advantages in a loss. And by doing that, it's, going through the process of saying, okay, losses are a part of this. We learn from each loss. Okay, we can say that there's always something to learn from each loss. And there may not be. There may not be anything for us to learn from a loss. Other than, hey, the market just didn't work. And there's no rhyme or reason why it didn't work. It just didn't. So it's time to just pick up and move on. It's just time to pick up and move on. So we have, we're developing our willpower to where we're not relying or thinking about the outcome of our trade, but we're thinking about, what can we do, or where can we go positively from this? And so we're able to withstand having multiple losing trades. We're able to withstand that because we have the willpower due to the habit that Keystone habit that we created to make us okay dealing with losses. I hope I explained it right. But we develop willpower. We develop willpower from how our habits to respond to situations. So we create the best habits to respond to these situations, and I think it's going to put us in a better place. But I think when you start thinking about this and you start trying to come up with a process that you need for dealing with losses or losing streak or whatever, and you're going to need the willpower to push forward through all of that. It's going to come from that process that you developed. Just like the Starbucks employees or baristas. Did I say that right? Baristas. I don't want to disrespect anybody that might have worked at Starbucks or still work at Starbucks, but if that gives them the willpower to keep smiling and keep working throughout the day because they have a process to deal with an unruly customer. All right, any more questions? I want to try to get 1190 out of this. Man, if this thing stops at 1190.50, we're gonna fight. We will fight. If this stops at 1190.50, we're gonna fight. It's got to get away from 11.90.50. All right. I was about to take profit, but it dipped right when I killed the damn order. Well, it may rebound, but until then, I'm gonna keep making money. How about that? I think it's gonna bounce. Well, it's not good for me. It's good for the guy's account that I'm trading, but I'm happy. um, so this has actually moved up to 11.87. I probably could have held out and tried to take profit at 11.87 if I knew it had moved up, but that's fine. So I'm gonna get this recording to you guys. Does anybody have any questions?